Welcome to Dice and Mind, a podcast hosted by Brad Brown and Jason Kaufman to explore the intersection of life, games, science, music, philosophy, and creativity through interviews with leading creatives. All are welcome in this space.
We are currently engaged. We are currently engaged.
Yes.
You sent that to me today, obviously. I saw that. I couldn't respond because I was in the midst of setting up for that meeting I had, but I did see that. You are leading an adventure with a couple of us.
Slowly,
but it's there.
Yes,
we are gaming.
There. Yes,
it is. Which reminds me, as an aside, we should maybe utilize our own Discord, which we do have.
Which we do.
We should maybe utilize that for our adventures. You know,
that is a very good idea and would be more efficient than email.
Yeah. We'll sidebar that for outside of the conversation.
But good thinking.
Yeah. But we're doing that and we're playing within the Star Trek realm, but I'm playing a Klingon.
You are.
I'm playing a Klingon, and I'm doing it because I needed something different. I wanted to do something different just because I just didn't want to play a Starfleet character right now. But I'm playing a Klingon in Starfleet as an exchange
Yeah,
program.
it's really clever.
Yeah. Kind of like what
Riker did. Yeah, and Kern, right. Yeah.
Riker and Kern did in TNG and DS9.
Sometimes leadership is about knowing when not to duck.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So when we had a friend of the podcast, Michael Dismuke, on a while back, or when we were on Jim and Michael's continuing conversations, I can't remember.
One of the two. Yes.
One of the two.
Yeah.
He had talked about this idea of merging Dune's houses idea and using it for Klingon houses.
Yeah, because he wanted to be able to play in a Klingon-rich game.
Yes. And most recently, they had us join them again, and he talked about this again.
And I'd heard the preview because when I saw Michael for lunch out in Castro Valley, California,
that's what it was.
Over my winter break, he was all excited, I mean, truly all excited, because he had just finished that process. He hadn't posted it yet to continuing missions. He had just finished the, I guess I call it translation. And I remember hearing it and I'm like, okay, I'm fascinated. Tell me more.
And the blog post is out there, which we'll have in the show notes.
Yep.
It's
a fascinating read.
Yeah, and I literally have it as a bookmark on my bookmark bar.
I printed it.
Yeah, I printed it too, but I also have it as a bookmark. Because to me, this is I think one of the coolest points of entry into the Star Trek universe. If you want to play in Star Trek, but you want to try something different instead of going in as a Starfleet character. And how many people go in and cosplay or go to Trek conventions as a Klingon or
so many.
Else,
and I mean, you know my interest, that the older I get and the more I think about Trek, the more I want to know about Trek beyond Starfleet.
Yeah.
Okay, but let me just segue for a sec. Just for a sec. So for our intrepid audience who might not be into Trek, A, why? But B, we didn't ask Michael to come back because this was Trek, but because when he told us about this and then we talked to him further and then we read his post in his conversion matrix, literally, that it represents this really novel, beautiful example of mashups, of homebrewing in your RPG. And like you and I, that's what we were talking about.
Of Star Trek Adventures.
Of Star Trek and Dune.
Dune and some Iron
Star
Forge,
Starforged. Yep. Iron
Starforged,
Starforged.
Starforged.
That's
Yes.
right. And so just I want everyone out there listening to know that of course we're enamored with it because it's Star Trek Adventures, but that's not actually truthfully why we invited Michael to come back. It's this, what he did is this wonderful example from both a gameplay and a literary perspective of homebrewing, of taking a franchise, or in this case, three different franchises or I guess two franchises in another game that you love, and then integrating them in a really creative way. And you like I tend to write my own adventures. They're okay. You created Homeland for our D&D game. We talk about that. You talk about that in the interview, which is coming in a moment. But just to be clear, what enamors us isn't so much that it's Trek or Dune, both of which we love, but it's just this really great example of how you can take totally different threads and weave them together in a new way for your table.
And how he did it for world building purposes.
For world
So
building, that's right. You wouldn't even have to play, actually.
no, so if you're into world building, even if you're a Dune fan or a Trek fan or just a fan of sci-fi or
Hmm.
sci-fantasy,
Hmm.
I think it behooves you to listen because you're going to hear and maybe get some ideas from one of, let's be honest, one of the most creative people we know. Um,
Be careful. He might be listening.
sorry,
Yeah.
sorry, Michael, but no, it is. I mean, just
But it
very
is,
creative
yeah.
ideas.
And
You
so
know,
it's just, well, we should just get to it because
yes,
it's a really, it's just a great example of world building, but doing your own thing, taking from what's already out there.
yeah.
Michael Dismuke is a certified professional in talent development and certified leadership development and succession strategist. He is a national speaker, trainer, and consultant, a freelance writer for the Star Trek Adventures RPG, and a published comic creator.
As usual, we started talking. We had to pause just a minute to hit record. So, Michael, thanks for joining us. Feels like we just talked to you, which we actually did
We
just
did,
last
yeah.
week for a future episode of the Continuing Conversations podcast.
Two
We're bringing
episodes.
what's
Two
two episodes?
episodes.
Yeah,
That's
When
right.
we talk, I always prepare for two episodes.
yeah,
That was great.
and it really and we really should just do that anytime we have you on
And I will
or
say, as promised, that conversation kept me up that night.
Me too.
Yeah,
yes.
because I was still thinking about it. I was still processing what we talked about.
Yeah.
Yeah.
In fact, I think I was too real on it. I was wondering if I should go edit some of my.
Why?
What?
No.
People can listen to it and decide later.
Yeah.
Yeah, let them.
Let them all judge us as they will.
Yes, let history be the judge.
That's
Yeah.
right.
So okay, so we started on a thread here. There's a point of us having you on because we want to talk about but we I want to talk about Brandon Sanderson for a second because I will be perfectly transparent, and this will probably um,
Surprise
incur
no
the
one.
ire of a
Oh.
few folks out there in
Mm.
that I really have never read or heard much about him
Mhm.
up until a couple weeks back when
Mhm.
Jason came back from a trip out west
Yeah.
when he had time and he spent it with you and was
Yeah.
We had a
talking
great
about
date.
Brandon.
We had a great date at my favorite cafe.
It was
Yes.
a
Our
great place.
wives were
Yeah.
shopping and doing whatever else. And it was
And
That's right.
and Jason came home and said he bought a Brandon Sanderson novel and is reading it. And I'll be honest with you, there was about 30 seconds of silence on my part due to the shock of that because normally that's
I'm not a
not.
big fantasy reader. A little bit.
Yes.
Yeah.
And then I noticed our friend Al Spader was talking about Brandon Sanderson on his Facebook page.
Yeah.
And then with
Yep.
our time with you and
Well,
Jim on continuing conversations, it came up again. So I have literally been
and
inundated with
and
Brandon
what
Sanderson.
one of my daughters, what pushed it over finally was because Michael, you brought up Sanderson in terms of like in terms of his writing and his coursework and his transparency about writing and publishing and agenting and all that. But
Correct.
then when my younger daughter picked up one of his, I think it's his new adult, right? That's the category now, the new adult novel. And
Mhm.
my college student daughter wants to read it, and then like all of those things at the same time. And then the bookseller at Barnes and Noble was like, oh, he's really good. And if you want to start, but you don't want to commit to a 1,500-page book, start with this one. And it's like, okay, clearly, like the universe is telling us something. So
And
I'm
now
going to
there's
give
an
it a try.
RPG based
Well,
off
and
of his
mind you, I've
universe.
never read one of his books either. I've
See how
watched
funny.
all the YouTube videos with the class. They have
Oh,
a
wow.
series of YouTube videos for writing fantasy or science fiction, and
Hmm.
I watched all of that. I will eventually read him one day.
Hmm.
It's on my backlog of books, but where I was coming from was if you want to learn how to write and market yourself and kind of get a first step in on the business very transparently, master class for free on YouTube. You can go
I did
look at
what you
all the
said.
videos.
I made it through, I think while I was cooking, I made it through about the first half of the first lecture.
Mhm.
And like even that was informative. I'm like, oh, this is
Yeah.
really like super honest.
Yep. I keep it on the background even when I was working on, I listened to the whole thing, but I kept notes of what I really liked, because you can bookmark on YouTube like what
Yeah.
section you like.
Yeah.
And I would play it for inspiration to get me over the hump on certain points of
Oh,
character
nice.
development and plot development.
It's just I bring it up because it's just fascinating how just this little podcast we had introduced, who the fascinating people we get introduced to like you, and then through that, you know, you know, being introduced to people like him and his, not only his works as an author, but you know,
Mhm.
I didn't know about you know, his lectures and all that in how to write and how to market and everything
Right.
like
And
that.
I think it's reverse engineer. He reverse engineered his novels into what is one of the highest selling RPGs on Kickstarter at any given time. And I think I'm dropping the
Amazing.
number correctly. You can Google it later. $44 million.
I
Yeah, you sent this to me in the middle of the
my
day when I
God.
was in the. You
I've got to
said,
listen to more of his stuff. Yeah.
yeah. So
So he's hacked. He's what do we call it? He's hacked it.
He's
He's figured
he's
out the hack.
he's hacked
yeah,
the system. Yeah.
I'm proud of
yeah.
him. So no one
Oh.
should ever like. I would never dare anyone to try to. I mean, he's the Stephen King of our time. Really, is what he
Yeah.
is.
Yeah.
Is that
Yeah.
he hit a really good market. He has epic story, epic world building. Followed it up with RPG that people want to play in. I mean, it's really the dream state for a writer. To be able
So
to do that.
so speaking of RPGs and dream state for a
Mhm.
writer, so you recently shared with the world, I'm just going to be sloppy in my language here, a mashup of, among other things, the Dune RPG and Star Trek Adventures RPG, of course,
Mhm.
and you fleshed out a system for how to create Klingon houses, like in detail, if you want to play that way in STA.
Mhm.
And um again, when we had lunch, you were kind enough to tell me about this, and you didn't say a whole lot. But you were really excited, and you mentioned a couple things you used as resources, and I remember thinking, okay, this sounds fascinating. Like I went home thinking, okay, I'm really looking forward to seeing this. And then very shortly thereafter, you posted it online and with a lot of detail.
Mhm.
And I mean, like Brad and I were talking about it right away. It is so fascinating. And so we would love to hear, not to be cliche, but like what, you pitch it, obviously show it for a moment, like what is it? But then
Mhm.
also like what was the process? And not just this mashup specifically, but like why would you even want to do those things out of the box?
Yeah. Yeah. I think the word I think about, perfect segue from Brandon Sanderson is world building. In doing 4 years of Star Trek Adventures podcasting with Jim Johnson, and riffing, we realize that there's more than Starfleet out there. In fact, there's
Mhm.
very interesting species that we've seen very surface because most of the shows are primarily focused on Starfleet. Um, except for Prodigy, except for a bump with Picard where
Mhm.
Starfleet's the enemy,
Mhm. Mhm.
and so one of the things that everyone comes on the show when we talk about Klingons, they're so rich in history. And I'm the kind of writer where I'm breaking things, and I don't believe I choose as a writer to say Starfleet's not all that good, and that this air of superiority they have toward Ferengi or Romulans or Klingons, I want to believe that Starfleet has followed suit with American propaganda.
Right.
Because that's understandable to people like, okay, we actually know we're not that great, but we have to make it ourselves look better than everyone else. So
Yeah.
doing something like this Klingon house thing was, let's show the pride of the Klingons. And when it didn't strike me until I picked up the Dune book at Gen Con in 2023, and I read the Dune book, houses, minor houses, major houses, and all of a sudden I was like, wait, this is Klingon. This is straight up Klingon. What we don't see is how they run business as Klingons. We think they're all
Right.
hack and slash rah, but no, they have a
Yep.
huge, thriving gal corner of the galaxy, and they dominate other species. Or do they? Why are we assuming other species would not want to be ruled by Klingons or have their protection? If I was a peaceful species, I really actually would love have Klingons willing to shed blood for me so I can, so anyways, that's where it all came from. And I said, I'm going to take, since Modifius didn't do it or Star Trek Adventures couldn't do it, and they didn't do it in the Klingon rulebook that touched a little bit on houses. I was like,
Yeah.
how do I build 100 years of legacy for my house and then introduce my character so that
Hmm.
I can do what the Klingons in Star Trek, the TV show, do? They refer back to ancient battles. They refer back to old blood debts. But the character life path from STA doesn't let you go that deep. It's really just about your in initial character and their career events. So I just felt Dune was the book, the
Yeah.
unspoken book on how to build Klingon legacy. And it had been running in my mind. I had been talking with Eliza Pearl about it. She came on the show, who ran Blood of the Void, the live game, and then Andrew Peregrine from Dune was very excited about the idea. He's the game designer,
Nice.
the lead game designer on it. So that's how it incepted. And I was like, let me put it out there, and then let me start playing it with my crew for our next campaign.
What's the feedback been like so far?
Oh, they're thrilled. We haven't started yet because we're wrapping up our last one. They're all creating characters and legacy stories, which is perfect because
Oh, cool.
honestly, you need months. If you really want to create 100 years of legacy or even 1,000 years of legacy, that's a lot of rolling you got to do in the Dune system to build your house.
Yeah.
And then
Mhm.
when we have our session 0, they're basically going to come in and tell us the story of their house. If they want to sing it in Klingon opera, they may, because that's common for
Nice.
opera
What
being
about
used.
K-pop?
Oh, yeah.
Come on,
Klingon pop.
Klingon
Klingon
pop.
pop.
Yeah.
Okay.
Or
Okay.
hard. I mean, but the point of the matter is when they come in, I want each character to come in with a pride of
Yeah.
who they
Yeah.
are
Right.
and be willing to die to defend the honor of their family. That's going to be
So cool.
a role-playing improv that'll be super interesting, I think.
Okay, so obviously you took STA, you took the Dune RPG, but you've mentioned to us before off air there were other resources you drew upon.
Mhm.
What and like
Yeah.
why?
Well, so the Dune RPG will have you build your industry. So it'll help you understand what your major industry should be. So Klingons, not everyone is building batliths.
Right.
Who's in agriculture?
Right.
Who's running Klingon operas? Who is having a resort? Maybe they have vacation resorts for Klingons and retreats. Who's at the monastery working? So
Right.
Dune helps you build that industry, but what it doesn't help you do, Dune, in detail, was build what your planets look like.
Okay.
And so that's where I opened up Captain's Log Solo RPG. And I
Hmm.
said, let's roll up some idiosyncrasies to the planets, and then even more detailed. We didn't have room in Captain's Log RPG to do what I really wanted to do, and that's Starforged Solo RPG. That planet building and vaults, and like if I do have my own castle, what is a Klingon castle? What's in my castle? And that's where I love Starforged Solo RPG for that. So basically, it's meshing all the random tables I could find to help create my
Okay.
legacy and look and feel for my house.
I'm going to ask the last question now. because I'm going to ask this later, so I'm just going to ask it
I
now.
don't know where this is going.
Do you foresee this at some point being like a really cool, like even if it's like a PDF type of
Oh,
something or another that could be put out? And again,
Well,
maybe,
yeah.
I see this as cool enough that this is just a phenomenal entry point for folks that, because for me, I'll diatribe for 30, give me 30 seconds. The more you watch, especially when you got into later parts of TNG and you got into DS9,
yeah.
you saw the honor of um, Klingons. And
Yeah.
when you
Yeah.
saw Worf and you saw Martok engage and you saw how Worf dealt with his brother and kept, and kept the empire together, giving, when he killed Gowron, but gave the chancellorship to Martok. You saw
Yeah.
all these pieces. I could see people wanting to say, you know what, I want to play like that. And I want to play as a house, but
Yeah.
I don't know.
You're playing Risk basically at this point, right?
Yes.
But
Interesting.
to me, my favorite Klingon episode, if you're gonna ask me, the one that gave me the most insight that inspired this was House of Quark.
Oh, with Grilka.
Deep
Yes.
Space Nine, House of
Oh
Quark,
God, so funny.
because you learn they have a very intricate legal system that didn't involve violence, takeover, or anything like that. There were certain laws, and there's ways you can, like Dune, you can whittle your way into a house and you can slowly ascend to the air. It's not going to happen right away. So think about this scenario real quick. I want to take over your house because you happen to have 4 Klingon birds of prey, great agriculture, and a dilithium mine. So I come in there without thinking, and I say, I'm going to just chop the head off the ruler. Okay, you take him out. Wait a second now. You got his consort, his wife, you got the heirs, you got people who have a financial interest. They're just going to take you out. That's how
Hmm.
Klingons work. And then you're going to have blood debt. So your whole family is dead now. So your house is now an enemy of their house. And you've created a war that's just going to spill over. Whereas if you're a real Klingon, you have to make friends, curry favor, maybe do some politicking if the head of that household does something bad. Do a propaganda campaign first until finally the Klingon High Council deems, like in Dune, that you know what? If you can take out that house, we'll grant you the house and the laws will support you in taking out this house. And then take it doesn't mean you're still not going to have some blood debt and some people wanting revenge,
Yeah.
but by then
Yeah.
you better have a pretty good inner circle that's going to protect you from that. To me, that's Dune, that's Klingons.
Yeah.
Starfleet, the biggest mistake they ever made was coming up to the Klingons and not respecting that. They came
Mm.
with no legacy. They came against someone who said, wait a second, if I blow you from the stars, I don't have any revenge for this, but I get to mark off that I did a kill, which is honor, that I'm so tough. If I do this to another Klingon, I could get my whole family wiped out. Wait, but I do it to the Starfleet, I can praise all day. You guys are free. You guys are free tokens. That they didn't understand that mentality, Starfleet. They should have gone in, made trade agreements with Klingons, honored them, esteemed them, create some relationships that you can't break so that now you're protected going into Klingon territory. Because if you as Starfleet get attacked by them, now that house is going to defend your honor.
I'll say this instead of asking a
Politics.
question. I'll just
Yeah.
make a statement and
Man.
say I'll preach from the hilltops that this should be a really nice, much like you saw the animated series had a really nice supplement out there that you could grab. I think this would be a great supplement for folks, at some point, somewhere,
I
somehow.
would hope
I
Because
mean,
so.
I really
one
do.
can print the web article as a PDF. I'm just putting it out there for
Well,
the
I know
world.
they
well,
can.
you can,
Yeah,
you
Yeah.
can.
you can.
What I would
But
actually
I think
invite
you could even flesh it out
yeah,
further. I think
if
with what you said,
Oh
yeah,
you
yeah.
can.
if there was a market for it and they
Mhm,
said go, I would call up Andrew Peregrine.
Yeah.
mhm.
Yeah.
I would call up Derek Tyler Attico, Klingon
Yep.
knows Klingons, and I would say take the Dune book, take the Klingon CRB, and meld them into one book.
Yeah.
House, call it the Klingon High Council or something instead of Houses of the
Oh
Landsrad. Call it
yeah.
the supplement Klingon High Council, and we take the Dune rules and you just go through and you convert them all to Klingon law.
I mean,
Right?
I would get that just to read it.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Like, I
Imagine the
mean,
houses detailed like that. If you
oh
if
my
you have the
God.
Dune book, they detail all the houses, their
Yeah.
industry, agriculture, history, minor houses.
Man.
You could
Hashtag lit
build,
as RPG right there.
Yeah.
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 Yeah, that would be absolutely fascinating.
Yeah.
Sorry, that was
Mhm.
like that should have been like the ending of the discussion. I had to say it
Yeah.
now. So let's go back because but
Well,
I wanted to say that right at the
like my high
outset.
school pre-calc teacher, you put the cart before the horse. But
Yeah,
yeah.
Yeah, you
exactly.
gotta know the goal you're going. Well, no, I'm glad you asked that, Barry, because honestly,
Yeah.
people should know the target you're hitting for. And
Mhm.
what I like it too, I believe all RPG can also be solo RPG. So
Yeah.
when I move away from my group, can I still play some form in my world by myself? And with this, you can say, you know what? I built 100 years. My people can't show up. Let me go back for 200 years now. Let me build a little bit more history so I can now bring that in with my character and talk
Just
about it and
crazy.
let the dice decide. What's again, Dune has the random table as to whether you have opportunity or crises.
Yeah.
I roll that once a year for my house, and then I
Oh
decide how
man.
bad things get, and I talk about it. You know,
So
yeah.
interesting.
It even has like a traveler-esque type of thing. You aren't going to necessarily die during this process, but like you could with Traveler if you play the original rules. But there is that kind of component to it where I could just, even if you're sitting around the table, even if you're doing it by yourself, I could just see us sitting around a table,
Oh yeah.
kind of rolling and telling the story as you're doing it. You know,
I would love for you guys to build that. I mean, I'm going to
Yeah,
be
that would be
very
fascinating.
careful who I invite into the group to
yeah,
play this
you know.
game. This is not just roll
I think
dice
you
RPG.
have to have a I
Well,
think you would have to have like there's a commitment involved in this
Hmm.
for you doing this because this is your first foray into it,
Right.
but I could see someone even doing solo as this is fleshed out and everything like that. I could just
s-
see guys sitting around on a Zoom
just
if you're not
hanging out
local.
just
Just
on Zoom,
Yes.
drinking some blood wine, just talking about
yes.
their
Well,
houses.
Yeah.
imagine putting out the Klingon map, right? Say you have the Klingon map and you're like, you roll up a crisis like we're running out of dilithium.
Yeah.
And then the game master says, okay, there's dilithium here and here. This house is a blood enemy, so they're not going to trade with you. This house will do it if you give them some sectors of land. In Dune, you can move land and resources around. And so you're almost negotiating it like risk. Like, okay, am I gonna
Yeah.
make this move? And then once you all decide, like, yeah, our strategy is actually to take over this sector, now you bring in the modules and you start playing through that adventure and you
Oh,
risk
that's
losing.
interesting.
And
Yeah.
just like the Federation Klingon War campaign, if you picked up that one, if you won the module, you got some sort of benefit in game, which you narrate. If you lose, you get some sort of penalty in game, which you narrate. So each of our missions would be that. It's like if you fail, there's a cost to your house. And
Yeah.
I just love that. And then we sit down and say, okay, we have to hurt a little bit. Let's roll some random dice.
Well,
What's going to be the penalty?
so I'm going to bring this back for just a sec, because of a term they use. I'm going to bring this back for just a sec to Brandon Sanderson.
Mhm.
So the upcoming RPGs, right? Stormlight and Mistborn. Excuse me. I'm holding out for Mistborn because that's the book I'm reading right now, and it's very intriguing. I'm a patient guy. I'll wait till 2026. Fine.
Mhm.
But this interested me when I was watching like the promo videos that, or maybe it was the Kickstarter video that those RPGs are being developed as quote living RPGs, which I just kind of inherently love. And I think Michael, you can already see where I'm going with this. So Sanderson is still writing, presumably intends to, I mean, there's a lot of money to be made yet. So he's still writing and he's going to have probably a bunch of books, right? He posts where he is in his writing, like just so, like you said, totally transparent. But they're living RPGs that as more canon literature comes out,
Mhm.
the game will necessarily have to update with that. And so what you're describing, Michael, it to me that sounds in the best way like a living RPG that you've got this background, but you're not talking about leveling up. You're not talking about character advancement. You're talking about with the completion or not of each mission, that's going to have potentially significant, long-lasting, even permanent effects on the house. And
Yeah.
so right, and so the world, this is so cool because the world
Yeah.
building then
Well,
remains
here's the
living.
clincher. So if
Yeah.
I'm designing this game, and like I said, I have my dream team of Derek and Andrew Peregrine there.
Yep.
The difference in this RPG would be this. Your goal at the outset of setting up your houses, you could not set up a major house. You'd have to
Yep.
set up
Yep.
either a nascent or a minor house, right?
Fair.
Your goal to win the game against your fellow players is to get your character or a member of your house onto the High Council. That would take years. But your goal, however
That's
the game
cool.
works, is once you get onto the High Council, you actually give up that character, you win,
Hmm.
that character becomes an NPC. Now go start with another house. Now, when you face off against your own character, even in the future as an NPC, this person of legacy, you're going to honor and respect your own character, the others who played alongside you.
Yeah.
But your goal, and there may be some characters. If I'm an NPC, I may say, you know what? Or not. If I'm a PC, I may say, hey, buddy. Okay, let's say it's Brad's character, right? I say, Brad, I don't think we both can get on the High Council. I think I'm instead going to spend my resources to get you on the High Council. You make me a general. I want to be a general once you get on
Yeah.
there, and I want a fleet of ships.
Yeah.
And so you
Yep.
could actually strategize with your players and just really, I could see this being part board game too, where you're moving up and High Council is the win.
I mean, coming to Civ 8 in a few years. I mean, seriously, this would be fascinating.
I just see this. This is a really great way. We'll put the link to the article obviously in our show notes here, but I
Yeah.
just think that this is a very fascinating way for folks who would love to play in the Trek world. And for me, who loved how and let's be honest, even beyond like you said, the economics of the Klingon of the Klingon Empire, economics of Klingons,
Yeah.
period.
I think they
You
get
know,
along better with Ferengis than humans and Romulans. I think Ferengi and Klingons have a lot in common.
you know,
Mhm.
I think they have a lot in common the way they run business.
Mhm.
this would be just a fascinating way to play and to interact with Starfleet as an NPC.
Okay, so
You know,
I got a question about that. So I'm thinking about this. Um, and I do want to just segue in terms of I gotta say, Klingons and Ferengi, I agree. At the end of the day, Umox is Umox. Right.
Exactly.
But okay, so
20 sips
presume
of Latinum is 20 sips of Latinum.
exactly
Yeah.
exactly right.
Yeah.
So so at this upcoming table, right? This first run, like you said, the expectation will be like session zero, like everyone. Well, maybe you'll help create the houses, but like to get started playing, every player will have to come with their house, right?
If they want.
Okay,
Because some Klingons don't have houses,
okay,
remember?
fair. Oh, that
Right.
fair. Okay.
So we have some players who I think are not going to be as committed to go back 200 times. It's like, okay, fine, you
Hmm.
work for this house then.
Hmm.
And yeah, you could
That
go
is cool.
change
Yeah.
and get a new job at another
Okay.
industry and work for a different house. We
Mhm.
said that happened a lot. You can get adopted into a house too, remember.
Yeah,
You
very
don't
cool.
have to be bloodline to
Right.
take over a house.
Mhm.
So I think the joy of a competing house is this. Suppose you have the captain of the ship who's one house, and then somebody who's high ranking in the house is their first officer. That
Mhm.
first officer is a bigger threat because they have a house. So if they take you out, they have backup to maintain the power position. Whereas the average Klingon who's not powerful and doesn't have a good house is not going to try to take out the captain. The
Yep.
next person who has a house is going to take you out right away. Right. So there's all those dynamics that I want to see how my players, if they choose to have their own house, to be an
Yep.
heir to a house, to be allied with a house, to be a free agent looking for the
The
house.
power
Okay,
politics of
so
it.
farther downstream, like not right away, like once you've all kind of gotten your legs under you, and like you're rolling, this is working, you're a few adventures in.
Mhm.
Like examples like Jean-Luc Picard and Beckett Mariner come to mind. Like, what if, and again, not right up front because that would be potentially, where we're going with it, potentially difficult to like integrate before you iron everything out and play. But what if someone wants to play a non-Klingon as like a Chadich or whatever, or a Ferengi,
We have
or
someone already doing that.
okay, so
So we
like,
have
how will
one,
you
I've
handle
allowed
that?
one character, and what they did is they built a character. It's actually Aaron Paulier is building his character based off one of the modules he built that's Klingon based for STA.
Yeah.
He created a species that actually exists in the Klingon Empire peacefully with the Klingons.
Oh, that's interesting.
So he's
Yeah.
bringing that person onto the ship as
Okay.
something we've never seen before again.
Mhm.
And let me be clear, something I think, this is my head canon, right? All the Klingons you pretty much meet in Star Trek are the border Klingons. And what I mean by that, those are the ones who are KDF. They're the Starfleet. They're the
Right.
Starfleeters.
Right.
And I think Klingons want to present a front generally of we are the Klingons. You don't get to see what our business
But they're
is
not
inside.
representative of the Klingon people as a whole.
Right. But I believe that in the interior, which we don't get to see in the
Right.
eastern borders, you do have other species who are working on archaeological vessels, trade ships. We know there's
Interesting.
Nibirites, right? We know Niborite Alliance a lot works with. So the premise is we are internal in the Empire doing archaeological stuff, and this character is very interested in space travel, and they're at peace with the Klingons. So like, yeah, let me hop on the ship.
Oh, that's interesting.
Could they ascend to being a member of a house? Yes, we know that because House of Quark proves it. That's that piece, right? There are political ways that a non-Klingon could get some stake in a house. Yeah, it's really neat.
So interesting. Yeah, seriously.
Yeah.
I just as you're talking, I'm trying hard not to like drift because I'm thinking about is, boy, I would love to play in a situation where it's post Praxis, post Kittimer Accords, where I'm a small house. Now I'm trying to take advantage of a situation where, you know, the empire is in turmoil.
Yes.
And
You read
I
my
want
article, right? You saw that
yeah,
that's the time period, right?
yeah, I want to take advantage. I want to take an economic advantage.
Well, here's the thing I've asked the people to do with the design of their houses. Think about this for a second. I've actually said someone needs to be aligned with House Chang, meaning that your house is friends with House Chang.
Interesting. Yep.
And I'm putting everyone on, and the captain initially is an NPC because it's up for the crew to influence. Are we pro Kittimer or are we anti Kittimer? And I'm going to let them make that decision, and they have to live with the repercussions on their houses because you side with Kittimer Accords, you're going to have enemies in the Klingon Empire. You go against them, you're now fighting the Klingon High Council. Right? So like I'm letting the players have to make that decision. There's going to be costs either way. They're going to make enemies by the decision of who they align.
Yeah, are they pro Gorkon or are they
And so what I did is I have the mission brief the free mission brief pack which I wrote called the Kittimer Accords. And I purposely, if you look at those, I wrote it to confront those issues. And so it kind of walks you through what was it like pre-Kittimer Accords when you first found out about it? What did your crew think about it? Let's discuss that. Now it happens, Praxis explodes. Now, how do you pick up the pieces from that? Do you form new houses? And so if you look through the pack, that's when I wrote it. That was the goal, was to have people experience as Klingons what that big change was like in the Empire.
I could even see myself as even like a tiny house sitting so far back in the weeds where I don't even have the luxury of even having access to that. I'm just like, okay, do I have an opportunity to find some way to, I'm thinking almost like a Ferengi, to find some way to increase my standing in some form.
What if your major house is against Galron's house and you get a note slipped to you and says, you know what, if you take out this major house and we actually survive the Kittimer Accords, we'll elevate you to a major house. Assassinate your boss.
Yeah.
I mean, those kind of things happened, right? At that time. So there's so many angles, like Dune, again, back to Dune, there's so many ways you can play it and let the players have to suffer through that.
And there's enough, and what's nice is there's enough Klingon lore out there now in the Star Trek universe that you can build this stuff and actually now have material. You have this material where you can play this deeply in the STA universe.
Yeah, could you play neutral too? I think some Klingon houses were neutral because maybe they provide food and grain. And again, one of my challenges to my team is like, we're not playing warrior cast. Yeah, we're all warriors if you have to be, but I want to show the diversity of Klingons and those who choose to rise up to fight, and
Mm-hmm.
why they had to do that, what the motivation was. Maybe they don't fight again with weapons, maybe they fight with science, or maybe propaganda. Maybe there's different ways they fight. I just find it so fascinating. I would love a Klingon series novels by Simon and Schuster. Tales from the Klingon Empire. I would just love seeing that.
Are there any other, I don't know what else to call this. Are there any other mashups, hybrids, syntheses that you'd be interested in doing? That you're willing to
Yes.
share? Like, I don't, maybe, okay,
I'll give you one we've done.
yeah.
I played it for 5 years. So the Romulans. So we played a very Romulan heavy game in the sense of our captain of our ship is Romulan, but was from a senatorial family. And we played several storylines about how the political structure of Romulans work. And in our game, just to show you how I like flipping it over, the Romulans were secretive because they felt Starfleet was arrogant in their superiority. And the Romulans in our game, all of the planets that fall within Romulan, all the species are actually on paradise planets. The Romulans are trying to protect the peace, and they feel that when Starfleet comes in, that they ruin things because for their political expansionist agendas. So that's the secret that was being protected all the time by the Romulans, is we don't need you. And I was basing it off what social issue? China. I've been to China. Okay.
Mhm.
Beautiful country. If I
Yeah.
was to just go with what the news says about China, I would believe so many sad things about that country.
Hmm.
I'm not saying it's a perfect political system. No such thing exists. But China is a beautiful, diverse country of a lot of different cultures. They're happy. I have friends who are from there and live there. They're happy. They're not trying to jump to the West. Some of
Yeah.
the things we perceive as freedoms, they see as traps. And so, with that said, I wanted the Romulans in our game to be that. It's like, we're actually happy. We don't need the Federation. And the fact that you think we must, and you make enemies of us just because we won't let you in, and so
Yeah.
you start seeding suspicion. that's
Yeah.
that's how I wrote our Romulan story. So yeah, you could do this, definitely have senatorial houses with this system
Hmm.
also.
Are there
Romulan.
any others that like not now, but like when you have the time, if you had the time, you would want to
Oh,
go after?
Cardassians. I love Cardassians. They're
Oh,
my favorite
oh,
species.
okay. So
Yeah.
what I have to think about Cardassians, but it's very like time period specific. What time period do you think you'd go
Thank
after?
you for asking that. Renaissance. I love I
Oh.
I would love to track
Really?
my house from the point of when the Bajorans had basically were at that time the occupying force on Cardassia, right?
Mhm.
And the Cardassians were this art-loving people. I want to track what was the political change. We know it was desperation and lack of resources that made it that they didn't choose to align with Bajor. What was it? Was it just a far right wing Obsidian Order movement that did
Hmm.
top of
Hmm.
council? Like, what happened to take a beautiful artsy people and make them what they became
Yeah.
later? And that's that epic story I would love to see, because I think it resonates with a lot of um, governments that, out of fear of lack of resources, must make enemies of people.
Hmm. Hmm. Oh, that's interesting.
Yeah,
I,
Cardassians are some of the most beautiful species, I think.
see,
And they
this is
have and that's such a mysterious species too. They haven't for whatever reason fleshed it out yet.
well, I mean, they did, I think, a
Enough.
beautiful job with over the course of DS9
Yeah.
of getting into it like but then it
Some.
stopped. Yeah.
But the
Yeah.
thing is, you saw the thing what I liked about what DS9 did is, yeah, you had the ones, and just going by what they written articles about, the Cardassians are supposed to be the Nazis,
Right.
the Bajorans are the Jews, but they showed that there was such a diversity of Cardassians even that had to learn to play within this manipulative system, be it Garrick, be it the archaeologist, like
Mhm.
you they weren't all like Gul Dukat. There was
Right.
a richness
Right.
to it, and those are some
Hmm.
beautiful characters to me
Yeah.
that I would love to explore, like the one where Kira was turned into a Cardassian and her so-and-so father, the
Oh yeah,
emotions
go
explored through
go.
him. I was just like, that was some amazing Shakespearean
Yes.
level drama.
Yeah.
And the
Yeah.
Cardassians are such a, I love, yeah, they're my number one species in Star
They,
Trek.
I mean, they just did, but I think, like, to me, this is one of the things that Star Trek does so particularly well, certainly compared to other franchises, even if they don't go far enough, they they so often will develop a sense of world building, culture, backstory
Yeah.
to their people if they're more than like bottle episodes, you know,
Yeah. And did you
and
read A
it's
Stitch in
great.
Time? Did you read that with the Garrick book?
Oh no,
Like,
no.
like, I love World War II history. I it fascinates me how a society can do deplorable things. Like, what's the psychology behind that?
Yeah.
And if you read A Stitch in Time, the society that created Garrick into the person he is, it's one of the best books. And it's written by the actor who played
Oh, Nate Robinson wrote it.
Oh.
yeah,
Oh, that's
Andrew
cool.
Robinson. Andrew Robinson.
Andrew Robinson. Yeah,
Yeah,
not
Andrew
Nate.
Yeah.
Robinson.
Nate
Yeah.
was an NBA player, not Nate.
Yeah.
Andrew.
Yeah. So Andrew Robinson wrote it, and so it's in his voice, plus he reads it on the audiobook too.
Oh,
Ooh.
Yeah.
I'm just gonna put that in.
Right.
You
So what
keep
I like
going.
about it is
yeah.
this: we're talking fallen heroes, right? I don't need Garrick to be Jean-Luc Picard. I want to know what makes a character do bad things sometimes,
Yes.
and then try to redeem it. Like Garrick to me is again one of my favorite Star Trek characters, right? So again, I think that there's a richness there. The way they represented the Cardassians in Deep Space Nine was better than how they ever presented Klingons in all of TNG, except toward the last seasons. They took time to really bake a well thought out species with, you know,
And
I love stuff like that.
one of my biggest questions for Star Trek, for like all of canon, is as the 25th century begins.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, you've heard this from me, Bradford. I mean, I've been talking about this
Well, we've been
since
talking about this
we've been talking about this since DS9 ended. Literally since
Okay.
DS9 ended. What has happened to Cardassia? Right?
Mm-hmm.
What has happened to the people? What, like, my head canon is, to whatever extent the Federation went in and helped in my head canon,
after 3 years of Picard and
right.
whatever
What
couple years of Discovery in the 32nd century, we got really no
we got
feel for it
nothing.
other than seeing
Yeah.
Cardassian officers in Starfleet,
Right,
and
Yeah.
right, which is good.
obviously,
I
yeah,
imagine something like a Marshall Plan,
yeah,
right? But what actually happened? Because to your point, like, it
Right.
was such a rich culture, and the people rose up after, of course, being decimated by their leaders,
Yeah.
right?
Right.
And so what, like, anything could happen. Like, is there an efflorescence by 2400 of all of this? I mean,
Like
I,
a
I
new renaissance with the
yes.
Bajoran and Cardassian people. Yeah. Yeah.
Right. You have the Bajorans become the bankers of the galaxy because they've got the wormhole, and then, I mean, so much.
Well, would the
They've managed
Ferengi
to
even
ignore all.
help them rebuild? I think
I
the
assume
Ferengi
so.
would help them rebuild
Right.
if there's a thing. Yeah, and those kind of stories in the 25th century would be epic for Star Trek to achieve.
hmm hmm
Yeah.
Well, let's
I
hope that Section 31 does ridiculously well so that there's enough money for them to tell more
yeah, I mean,
stories.
it's Michelle Yao, so they win right away. She could just stand there for
Probably.
2 hours and
Pretty
it's fine.
much. They'll make money off of it.
Yeah,
That's
yeah.
fair. That's fair.
she's just fun to watch.
Oh man, thank you so much for spending more time with us.
So
Oh, always.
We've been so intrigued about this.
as a wrap up, so you've got these articles and information out there. We're going to post the links to those in the
Yep,
show
of
notes so
course.
people can see them.
Mhm.
With your sessions and your gaming and all this, is this
Mhm.
stuff that's going to be out there so that people can
Good
watch or
question.
listen
Um,
at some point,
yes.
or
The-
not immediately? Do you
The
think?
session zeros, no, but then I always write a post play report.
Mhm.
Okay.
of my stuff, so I'll do that. The
Nice.
session zeros will only be done like maybe, or I call them session zeros
Yeah.
continue. So each one, like after we play a module, which on Discord can take about 2 months usually to get through like a whole module,
Wow.
because of the way we play by text. Then after we get that done and decide the outcome of that module, we would just like jump on like an hour phone call and do what we just did. We said, okay, let's roll a couple, see how this affected our houses. Okay, do we have any money to purchase and expand our power base?
Yeah.
Cool.
So
Draw it
cool.
on the little Dune map, and then we go back to Discord and play the next module.
Okay.
So cool. Well, we look forward to hearing more about this. This is
Hey,
this
you
is
may
one
have
of
houses you want to bring if you play by Discord. I mean,
I
I might.
I can be convinced for anything. I would love to create a house. That kind of blows my mind. This is one of the more intriguing things to me in Trek right now. Like that we could do, like you provided tools to do this, and I mean, we're always geeking out about world building. And this is like
Yeah.
you actually get to build your own world for your character, and then it evolves. That's pretty cool.
Yeah, I
I
want
mean,
you all
not
to
only you're
fall in
building
love
your
with the
current world,
characters. Yeah.
you're
Yeah.
building the history. This is not only just the current world. You're
Right.
building everything that formulated that current world.
Well, I've never even played a Klingon. I mean, this
Well,
is
I'll put it in the universe,
man.
my dream too, because I play with writers, right? I really do
Yep.
play with everyone writes,
Yep.
and I'm handpicking who is on here because it's going to be a little it's going to be way different
Smart.
from STA. Like it's very fail forward. If you can
Yeah.
imagine,
Yeah.
like
Yeah.
don't fall in love with your house; it could literally be blown up. So don't get
Right.
all emo if that happens. So
Yeah.
I'm the thing is I want to handpick people who have some writing talent because my dream I'm putting out here in the universe is if we did these 10 stories and I post edit it and write it into mini novella format, is it something we could all agree to publish if it ever got picked up?
See, wouldn't that be interesting? Yeah.
That would be cool.
Yeah.
Right. We talk because
Yeah.
we always talk about RPG as literature. Let's prove it.
Yeah. Right.
It's been done by like Jackson Lansing, Colin Kelly, Eric Campbell. They brought their elements of their RPG into actual comics and stuff. Even. So I'm like, okay, let's do this. Let's collab, and everyone plays their part. It's a co-written thing. And what if our RPG can become a tool for people doing that more? It'd just kind of be cool.
I mean,
Yeah.
that's what I think.
That's
I
pretty
mean, I
cool.
think you all laid a foundation for that with Captain's Log. I think that this could be just another way to do that.
Yeah,
And
play and end
like,
up working at the same time, right?
yeah. And I think if you're writing down, well, this would parlay into another episode, but we'll have to have you back because I think this is the whole point.
Well, I'm gonna
If you are writing your game the way you should, then it does become a story.
Okay, can I
know?
trip you out now? Because then you're gonna
Yeah.
want to have an episode
Yeah.
on this later.
Yeah.
So the way we do our Discord now, because Discord lines up and has all the timestamps, and we
Yep.
we all agree to write in past tense. So we write in past tense
Nice.
like novels, right?
hmm
I take that, I copy all that into a TXT file.
Okay.
I then dropped it. I prompted in my chat GPT how to clean it up, removing date timestamps, taking the handles and whose name is actually that
ridiculous. Oh my
handle and the
God.
character,
Yeah.
making sure that we have the grammar correct and it's all in past tense. So I take it, and that's how we end up with our mini novellas, which are very clean. Like going back on
Yeah.
reading them, they're clean. Now, if all of a
That's
sudden
so
I found
clever.
out, yeah. So now, if all of a sudden I found out that a publisher actually wanted to pick it up, yeah, I'd go through on one more concept review on it to make
Yeah.
sure
Right.
everything
Right.
clicks. But my group is like freaking out because even after we play a scene,
Yeah.
I grab that scene, I drop it into ChatGPT, I say summarize this in 80 words, and I keep an ongoing channel where you can go back and review what we played in the scene. So if maybe you got a little behind, you can go back and up and read each scene to catch up. So
That's
I'm
a really
using
good idea.
ChatGPT to do it's our work we're doing. It's all human work, but I'm using AI to quickly get it into novel format and format it.
That's
We're not stealing
unbelievable.
from any other
Yeah. No. Yeah.
No,
IP
you're in
stuff.
effect
Yeah.
using it to format and everything.
That's all I'm doing.
I oversimplified it, but I know exactly what you're doing.
That
That's
is
just
that is
that is
intriguing.
Okay, now let me irritate you one more thing because
yeah. No, keep going.
So in order to record the history of our houses, I use Zoom AI, right? So I could
Yeah.
hit Zoom
Yeah.
AI on a conversation. I then take that transcript and I ask it, now, based off this, give us a summary of the houses of what we discussed for the last hour. So you don't even have to
Right.
keep notes. I'll take the notes for
Yeah.
you. You have
Yep.
the AI summary, and now that goes into a channel as our
That
game
is
glossary of
cool.
everything we decided on, the results of our roles, because as long as you verbalize it, the Zoom AI can now summarize what the results of those roles are. And I can say, by the way, give me the results of the roles, but you omit any reference to roles. Just give it to me in narrative format. So you can build prompts like that. So I'm expediting from
Yes.
writer's room to,
Yes.
finished content. It's
Super
fun.
clever.
Yeah, it's really fun.
That is
Okay, one last thing.
I was muting before because I was adding some colorful, as Spock would say, some colorful
One last thing,
metaphors.
just to show you, this is if I had this when I was 15 years old. So every single one of the mini novellas we've done for the Pioneer, the USS Pioneer game, is a TXT file. I've given those TXT files to my entire group. They have access to it. Why? If they want to reference season 3, episode 2, and they can't remember exactly what role Garrick played in it, they now drop that TXT file into ChatGPT and they say, give me a summary of what Garrick did in this episode.
Oh,
And
man.
boom, it answers them right away. So it's their computer. So I call it computer. It's their module, right? And now I don't have to remind them. It's like, no, don't be lazy. You're playing in my game. You have all the TXT files. If you have a question, don't ask me. Look at the episode and ask it any question you want. It could even be literally something I've written. How many times did my character Franklin James get punched in the face in this episode?
Amazing.
And they can keep their own
That
channel
is
open.
such a good use of tech.
And keep them loading and keep their own channel.
Way to Star Trek your Star Trek, Michael. Seriously. Yeah.
I'm telling you right now, if I could find somebody who designs an app that can take all my TXT files, so they have an app walking around my game app, and they can type and ask questions to it like Siri and say, hey, could you remind me what Captain Jalil did in episode 4 when he fought the Breen? It's all
Hello,
there.
computer. Hello,
computer. Yeah, it's all there. The technology is there. I just need to. I wish I knew how to build an. I know you can build the app. I just don't know how to build that app.
Yeah, no.
But that's where I think gaming. That's where RPG is going, in my opinion.
That is, talk about a living RPG, huh?
Yeah.
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 Oh, that's okay. Well, that is to be continued. Thanks so much for sleeping tonight. That is to be continued. I'm going to have to think about that. That's really interesting.
You're going to be dinking around in this Discord over the next few weeks, I suspect.
Well, I have said this many times. If anybody out there who's tech savvy and what I just said is like, oh, that's super easy, come talk to me.
Seriously, yeah.
I'm an idea person. I'm a futurist, but I'm not the tech person. And I do this at work, by the way, too. We have, AI enabled at our work ahead of a lot of other companies. And we're in a not-for-profit affordable housing.
Yeah.
Because I know tech people who work for our company, and when they hear it, they're like, yeah, I can do that for you. So I'm looking for someone to do that for us with RPG.
Well, you got to find a way.
Very cool.
I mean, you're lucky you're lucky in the aspect that you got to find edges wherever you can do that. You don't necessarily have to deal with internal corporate bureaucracy just for the sake of bureaucracy.
Well, I mean, there are 1 or 2 people in the Bay Area who can program, so like it's probably only a matter of time until you find someone who can geek out.
Well, it's like in Nashville. It's like in Nashville when I worked in Nashville. Someone in the office plays a musical instrument somewhere. In your office, someone in there is a programmer somewhere.
Yeah, it's the monetizing factor. So
yeah,
believe me, we could do another episode on how I would monetize it, but that's a whole other episode.
Okay, well, I've got some homework set out for me between ChatGPT and Discord. I've started using ChatGPT, but obviously I'm grossly underutilizing it. I mean grossly. It's really exploratory with me right now.
I use it a lot. Man. I do as my editor. It helps because now that I can talk it out, like every one of the meetings at our work, we record. We use Microsoft Teams AI.
Okay.
We talk it out, summarize it from there, pull out agendas, create letters to the company, memos based off what we were discussing. And you always have to edit it. I don't trust AI.
Right.
But what AI is doing for creatives who just can't sit their butt down in front of a computer, like it's giving us a lot of,
or don't have the resources, right, to access these services that would be prohibitive, right? I mean, or you might not even know. I mean, there's you
don't know what you don't. You don't know what you don't know.
Yeah, hopefully this will help get more people more creative and more people writing, and even pitching.
confidence booster. I mean, just as an example with the anthology that we're working on, for
Yep.
the leadership in Star Trek. What's the title of it?
Essays in second star to the right, essays in leadership in Star Trek.
Right.
Until our publisher changes it. Yeah.
I was asking you questions like, how do I set up AMA standard bibliography?
Oh,
Like, how do I do that? Well, I ended up taking all my references of the books and I double checked it in ChatGPT. Did I do this right? So that helped build my confidence because I don't know
nice.
how to write librarian style. And I was like, oh, let ChatGPT tell me I did it right. I can send it to you. Hopefully it's close to perfect copy for you at that point. So there's things that people used to have to go to college for who may not have the means that can now
Right.
start building up their confidence for their papers that
Yep.
they're submitting good standard work.
Yeah.
They should still have the ideas themselves. They should create them initially, but it could work as our executive assistants proofreading for us, basically.
Yeah. Yeah. Man, Michael, never a dull moment, never a conversation on
I
or
love these.
offline without something thought-provoking. Yeah,
Fun.
this is really, Thank you so much for joining us again.
No,
I think
thank you. I tell you, I love every time, man. I'm glad we don't live closer to each other. Our wives would be mad.
Seriously, we'd all be in so much trouble. But you are working your way to. I'm gonna have to go back and check how many episodes you've been on now. I think we're approaching Smoking Jacket.
I think this is third.
Is this third? Okay, good. That buys us a little time.
Smoking Jacket.
Well, we started that with Jim Johnson. That we decided. I don't know how this got started, but we just if you come on 5 times. You get a smoking jacket, right? Kind of like the SNL sport coat, right?
Yeah.
And so Jim ended up with a really good looking DS9 30th anniversary sweatshirt.
Are you serious?
Oh
That's
yeah.
so awesome.
Yeah, that was our thank you.
Oh my God.
In fact, he wore it
I have a
to
goal in
lunch the first time we got together. It was really cool. Yeah.
Oh man.
So
Al Spader must have one now. He must have one.
No,
I
he's
don't,
behind you.
I don't think we're gonna have Al back. No, I'm just kidding.
No, you're ahead of him. I think he's been on twice, right? Al's been on twice.
Al's been on.
Beat Al. I'm gonna have to send you some interesting subjects to talk about.
Yeah, please. Yeah. We'll definitely. Yes, we'll definitely.
The race. We're gonna have the race to 5. That's gonna be that's
there we go.
Between you now. And we'll have to title the episode. What is this one gonna be called? Glory to you and your house.
Oh, that's good. Well done. Okay.
Yeah. And your house.
That's so scary.
Yeah. Those have been some of the best memes to come out in the past months, let me tell you.
Yes.
Well, no, I thank you both again. You're one of my favorite podcasts, anything game.
Right back at you.
Top of my list. So thank you again.
Well, again, always a pleasure to have Michael on. I think for those that have listened to it, I think it's one of those that you digest. At a minimum, if you have if you have the Dune Cole rulebook and you're a Star Trek fan, take a look at it.
Yeah.
Look at Michael's blog page.
That's required reading.
Yes.
I think even if you're not interested in Star Trek and or Dune and or Starforged, I don't know why you wouldn't be, but even still, it's required reading. Going through it and seeing because he's really transparent, seeing his choices along the way is cognitive fodder for what you might want to do with your games, regardless of what you play.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. Why don't we head over
to the Loon Cafe?
To the Loon Cafe. And again,
Excellent.
we still don't have
We're working on it. Yeah.
The soundtrack. I am looking at I can see my soundboard from here at least. I've gotten to the point where it's now it's not nebulous that it exists.
Yeah.
It's actually
money well spent.
Yes. So I think for me there's something new that for today, but I'm going to save that for the next episode.
I'm intrigued. Okay.
There is one that I'll talk about that I have talked about with you. It's spurred because of it's entered the Dyson Mind zeitgeist over the past couple of weeks, and you know where I'm going.
I don't.
Oh, Brandon Sanderson
There you and we're back.
Yes. Okay.
Very
So
good.
so you came back talking about him from California because Michael brought him up to
Because
you.
Michael brought him up, yep, because of
Um,
his teaching on writing, not actually his writing itself.
yeah, on his
Hmm.
teaching on writing.
Yep.
And Michael's talked about the fact that he hasn't read his
I know where we're
writing,
going. Yep.
you know,
Hmm.
but he has watched a lot of his YouTube videos on writing and
Hmm.
marketing and all that. He
Hmm.
and Michael even sent us some material
Hmm.
this week,
Hmm.
both of us on it. Um, you picked up a book
Mistborn.
about it.
Yep.
Yep,
It's good.
about it. And I know you had talked, I think you had mentioned your daughters were interested
They,
in some young adult potentially.
my younger daughter read his new adult novel, right? This is a new thing now, his new adult novel, which apparently I just learned from my younger daughter, Sanderson wrote for his wife, and it's a takeoff of The Princess Bride.
Oh, now I'm interested just because it's
So,
the Princess
and
Bride.
I've been hearing about it, and now my older daughter, who's in college, is reading it.
Oh, is there like a space version of Inigo Montoya in
I
it?
don't I no, I think it's entirely fantasy. I
Oh,
don't know much about it, um but I know they've been liking it or they liked it.
okay.
Yeah.
Now I'm fascinated by that.
Hmm.
Well, you know this story, but I'll speak it anyway. Um, I had picked up the um which series? Not the Mistborn series.
This it's part of the Stormlight, right?
But yeah, I picked up
The Way of the King, the
yeah,
first three.
the first three of the Stormlight
It's like
Archive.
4,500 pages.
Yeah, these books, I mean,
Oh my
these
God.
books are
It's
crazy
so
huge.
cool. Yeah.
Um, but it was
Yeah.
literally crazy inexpensive
Hmm.
as trade paperbacks,
Which
three
are
tour
just
books.
the best. Yeah.
Yes.
Hmm.
But um I kept them packaged because I kept it unopened because I had some things that needed to occur to allow myself to open
You
them.
were
I had some
waiting.
goals. Yeah.
Yes.
Um, that occurred today, so I'm allowed to open them.
Yep. Yep.
So
Yep.
I'm not going to start reading them until the week after next.
Yep.
I will open the book.
You'll have your
But
lunchtime reads.
that's going to be my lunchtime read.
So cool.
So um,
So Brad's going
that
to give us updates on the first book for the next 114 episodes.
yes, yes. Yeah. We'll see. I tend to, that I learned the funny thing is that I never realized I was doing it, but when I get into reading fiction or recreationally reading,
Yeah.
I speed read. And by what I
Interesting.
mean by that is I am reading groups of words
Yeah.
and I can potentially read almost a line of words at once,
Hmm.
if I'm not careful, and I can
Yeah.
digest them.
Yeah.
So the other
Pace
thing that I'm going
yourself. Yeah.
yeah, the other thing that I'm going to do as I'm doing this is I'm going to force myself to only read in groups of like 3 or 4 words
Yeah.
at a time so that
Really
I am
enjoy it.
digesting slower
Hmm.
and enjoying it as I do it.
Hmm.
Um, and I've had to do that with some of my other studies and things that I'm doing
Right.
because um, I just naturally get in this mode when I start
You tear
reading.
through it. Yeah.
I just tear through it. Um, and I do digest it. It's just that I just go so fast that
Yeah. Yeah.
I just rip through books.
Hmm.
So, how about you?
Mine is a little more bit more mundane and more on the point of our interview or chat with Michael Dismuke. Over this, as we record, over this past weekend, we had an extended holiday weekend, and so here in the States, and so I read the uh excuse me, I read Michael's post. Okay, I printed all this out. I read Michael's post on continuing mission in terms of creating Klingon houses. And then along the way, he references what he used by page and by chapter. So I read through those. I took a look at the Starforged, but I read the relevant chapters from the Klingon core rulebook and then from the Dune Imperium core rulebook. And so that was a kind of a nice diversion. I very much in not so much with the notion of gameplay in mind as world building. And then of course I had an idea, and then as I'm reading, I'm just realizing, wait a minute, that's awfully akin to what Michael came up with, and I don't want to just imitate that because of course I would want to go with like the Klingon scientist. However, this is maybe better because it forced me to push a little farther. So I have a very, very preliminary idea. It's nothing's worked out, but an
Oh,
idea.
you just wanted to kind of build one for your own
Yep. And so because it's like you do all this and it's like, well, like what would what house would I want to play? I guess you'd say from. And so I have like no idea for characters or anything, but it got me thinking about what kind of house would be interesting. And so again, there's nothing fleshed out, but I have a preliminary idea and just a sketch of the basic backstory where I thought, okay, I'll just create canon until I'm told no. And
See,
so so I did it.
I
Yeah.
thought about, and maybe I'm giving it away. I thought about what if, just based off of what I've read, and I've read
Yeah.
through the Dune stuff and
Yeah.
the Klingon stuff in the past because I have
Yeah.
the
And I
books
had
and everything.
not. Right.
You know, um, what if my house, a minor house,
Yep.
um, was focused on and had um, over the centuries and ancestors that were based on being from the law. They were lawyers in a way,
Oh, that's a
you know.
Counselor Worf. Okay, that's
Yeah,
yeah,
and
I
you know
like
what,
it.
and you know what it was. It wasn't even Star Trek 6 and
Hmm. Yep.
Old Worf.
Right.
It was, and I can't remember his name. It was from um, I want to say episode Star Trek 4
Yeah.
when
Oh,
the
what when they were
Klingon
on trial.
ambassador, when they were on trial, the
Yes,
Klingon ambassador was on trial. I'm like, what if I
that's
had a
neat.
minor house that was tasked with constantly looking for legal ways to attack the Federation?
Oh, oh, that's interesting. You and I are taking very different approaches to this.
That's just
Cool.
that's just an that's just and so I know Michael listens. So by the time Michael listens to this, we'll see if it, and I'll probably
Yeah,
get some feedback from him as to what he thinks. If I were to ever go down a
yeah.
path where I would build a house, I'll maybe get some feedback from him on it. But that was just my
Neat.
thought, and it came up after I read everything, and then I was watching YouTube shorts because I wasn't one of the people that cried out when TikTok went silent.
No,
Um, but I saw that video. Did you know that even though TikTok came back, Apple has not put the app back in the App Store?
we'll see what Apple does. I
Yeah,
mean, in general,
yeah. It's
we'll see
funny
what
that
they do.
it's funny the app is
Hmm.
not back, and Lydia, even my daughter, even mentioned me. She goes, people are still trying to download it and they're panicking because they
Well,
can't get the app because they deleted it.
remember what the law stipulates as well, that it's the app providers, the stores, who will be fined $5,000 per download.
Yeah,
But we'll see just how well Apple
yeah. We'll go.
breaks from. That's a
Yeah,
different conversation.
yeah. Well, and that's
Yeah.
a dangerous one that I put us
Yep.
at. We're
Okay.
we're
So maybe we'll just wrap up because
yeah.
and,
Let's walk away from that
then
because
next week we'll do the political conversation.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
Well, look, everybody, you know the deal. First and foremost, glory unto you in your house. And
No,
yeah,
no,
go ahead,
no.
do it.
Glory to you and your house.
It's a shame we don't do video because that was mildly disturbing.
Well, I have to do it without the glasses because
There you go.
you need to have like the
You have to have
Galra.
the
You have to go into
hypothyroidal
IRA.
eyes.
Yeah, yeah. I was gonna say glory to you and your
Very
house.
nice. Excellent. Okay. And well, Brad retracts from the screen. Thanks as always for being with us. Be well, stay well. We'll see you in a couple of weeks.